the sin of silence, for the sin of indifference, for the secret complicity of the neutral, for the closing of borders, for the washing of hands, for the crime of indifference, for the sin of silence, for all that is done, for all that is not done. Let there be no forgetfulness for the throne of glory. Let there be remembrance within the human heart, and let there at last be forgiveness, when your children, O God, may know reconciliation. And yet, even in the inferno, even there, were those we call Chasidei Umo Ha'olim, the righteous of the nations. Some gave their very lives to keep Jews from harm. Who can measure such courage? When so many were afraid to act, they bore witness to the greatness men and women can reach. Look and take heart. If ever such days return, remember them and find courage. Consider what can be done, what must be done, to cherish in our souls the image of God. Let the righteousness who are faithful be remembered for good. By their deeds they have inscribed themselves in the book of life.
Warsaw, packed with Jews like a shul on Yom Kippur. Jews crowded the walled-in, locked-in city. The first ones to be destroyed were the children. Little orphans abandoned upon the face of the earth. They who were the best in the world, the acme of grace on the dark earth. O tender orphans, from them, the bereaved of the world, in a house of shelter we drew consolation. From the mournful faces, mute and dark, we said the light of day will yet break upon us. Do not cry. At this station, another girl I saw, about 5 years old. She fed her younger brother, and he cried, the little one. He was sick. Into a diluted bit of jam, she dipped tiny crusts of bread, and skillfully she inserted them into his mouth. This my eyes were privileged to see. To see this mother, a mother of 5 years, feed her child, to hear her soothing words. My own mother, the best in the world, had not invented such a ruse. But this one wiped away his tears with a smile, injected joy into his heart. A little girl in Israel. Sholem Aleichem could not have improved upon her.
Paul Celan was born in 1920 in Romania to a German-speaking Jewish family. And although after he survived the Shoah, he settled in Paris, he always wrote in German. And Celan once said this of his mother tongue: reachable, near, and not lost. There remained amid the losses this one thing, language. It, the language, remained not lost. Yes, in spite of everything. And I'm going to try not to cry, but I'm going to try to read it in German for you. Schwarze Milch der Frühe. Wir trinken sie abends. Wir trinken sie mittags und morgens. Wir trinken sie nachts. Wir trinken und trinken. Wir schaufeln ein Grab in den Lüften. Da liegt man nicht eng. Ein Mann wohnt im Haus. Der spielt mit den Schlangen. Der schreibt, wenn es dunkelt, nach Deutschland. Dein goldenes Haar, Margarete. Er schreibt es und tritt vor das Haus. Und es blitzen die Sterne. Er pfeift seine Rüden herbei. Er pfeift seine Juden hervor. Lasst schaufeln ein Grab in der Erde. Er befiehlt uns, spielt auf nun zum Tanz. Schwarze Milch der Frühe. Wir trinken dich nachts. Wir trinken dich morgens und mittags. Wir trinken dich abends. Wir trinken und trinken. Ein Mann wohnt im Haus. Der spielt mit den Schlangen. Der schreibt, wenn es dunkelt, nach Deutschland. Dein goldenes Haar, Margarete. Dein aschnes Haar, Schulemit. Wir schaufeln ein Grab in den Lüften. Da liegt man nicht eng. Er ruft, stecht tiefer ins Erdreich, ihr einen, ihr anderen, singet und spielt. Er greift nach dem eisernen Gurt. Er schwingt's. Seine Augen sind blau. Stecht tiefer die Spaten ihr einen, ihr anderen spielt weiter zum Tanz auf. Schwarze Milch der Frühe, wir trinken dich nachts, wir trinken dich mittags und morgens, wir trinken dich abends, wir trinken und trinken. Ein Mann wohnt im Haus, dein goldenes Haar Margarete, dein aschenes Haar Schulamit. Er spielt mit den Schlangen, er ruft, spielt süßer den Tod, der Tod ist ein Meister aus Deutschland. Er ruft, streicht dunkler die Geigen, dann steigt ihr als Rauch in die Luft. Dann habt ihr ein Grab in den Wolken, da liegt man nicht eng. Schwarze Milch der Frühe, wir trinken dich nachts, wir trinken dich mittags, der Tod ist ein Meister aus Deutschland. Wir trinken dich abends und morgens, wir trinken und trinken. Der Tod ist ein Meister aus Deutschland, sein Auge ist blau, er trifft dich mit bleiner Kugel, er trifft dich genau. Ein Mann wohnt im Haus, dein goldenes Haar Margarete. Er hetzt seine Rüden auf uns, er schenkt uns ein Grab in der Luft. Er spielt mit den Schlangen und träumt. Der Tod ist ein Meister aus Deutschland. Dein goldenes Haar Margarete, dein aschenes Haar Schulamit.
We who lived in concentration camps can remember the men who walked through the huts, comforting others, giving away their last piece of bread. They may have been few in number, but they offer sufficient proof that everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. And there were always choices to make. Every day, every hour offered the opportunity to make a decision which determined whether you would be the plaything of circumstances, renouncing freedom and dignity to become molded into the form of the typical inmate, or whether you would choose instead to be free.
Often, when I leave home, I think of you, how you'd have shut the door that last time they fetched you out at dawn. What fears would prophesy, what intimations could foretell the terrors of those plains, the herding into ash. Or maybe you looked round as if before a holiday, leaving no trace of dust, no crumbs for pests, no moss in cupboards, carpets, covered the chairs, the settee from the glare of light and sun, turned off the water, gas.
When Leo Beck came out of the black midnight of the concentration camp, he looked about at the world and those who inhabited it. Many averted their eyes. They had been silent, or they had followed the multitude to do evil. In the darkness of the camp, Leo Beck had not despaired. He continued to believe in God and in human beings created in the divine image. Always he had sensed the Shekhinah weeping for her children. And so he continued his task as a rabbi. He taught and he gave comfort. When he came back into the new world, seared by the flames of Auschwitz and Treblinka, Beck continued the tasks of comforting his people. He blessed the congregation. When he lifted up his hands for the priestly benediction, the congregation felt the Shekhinah hovering above them. May God look kindly upon you and be gracious to you. These words took on a new meaning for those at prayer. The ancient times, the image of one Babylonian god was a clay furnace. When the fire of human sacrifices burned high, the glowing eyes of the idol glared death upon the onlookers. To see God was to die. The Torah transformed the vision of God. The terror turned into awe, and fear became love. In God's light, Israel saw light, but in our days, the world grew dark again. The pagan furnace roared, and Israel ascended into the sky as smoke. And when we who are alive wander across the darkened landscape, fitfully illuminated by burning idols used by humans to exterminate their neighbors. We need our teachers, those who died for the sanctification of the divine name, and those who survived to guide and comfort us. They tell us that the encounter with God can take place in the utmost darkness if we are ready for it. The blessing which shone through Leo Beck must touch our lives. May God reach out to you in tenderness and give you peace.
I think it's very important just to remember that we wouldn't have the Song of the Partisans without Hersch Glick. And he was a Yiddish poet. He was only 22 when he died in 1944 in a concentration camp in Estonia. But in his teens, he was already quite a well-known Yiddish poet. And when the war began, he joined a group of partisans, and despite successful efforts sabotaging the advance of the Nazis, he was imprisoned, first in a concentration camp called Weiße Wache, and later in the Vilna ghetto. There he took part in the 42 ghetto uprising and wrote the Song of the Partisans in 1943, setting it to a melody by a Jewish Russian composer called Dmitri Prokras. It became the anthem of the underground resistance movement, and later it spread to other ghettos and partisan divisions, even from death camp to death camp. Today it's sung as commemorative gatherings and services like this one, and just to say that Prokras did survive and only died in 1978.
Suffering we lay prostrate, but refusing to die we rose again, to tend the wounded and comfort the bereaved, to foster the orphans and reunite the separated, to strengthen old communities still intact, and to establish new ones in the far-flung corners of the earth, to found new synagogues and schools, and to write new books, retelling the tragic and heroic story of our people, which has not ended and shall not end.
O God, teach us to remember that we are the remnant of a decimated people. Let us feel the responsibility which now more than ever rests upon us, to honor the memory of the slain, to continue their work, to cause our faith to flourish again throughout the world, and bring its insights to bear on the problems which beset humanity.
hand of the Eternal One was upon me, and set me down in the midst of a valley. It was full of bones, and they were very dry.
God said to me, O mortal, can these bones live? And I answered, Eternal One, you alone
know.
Then God said to me, prophesy to these bones and say to them, O dry bones, hear the word of the Eternal One. Behold, I will cause breath to enter you, that you may live. I will lay sinews upon you, and cause flesh to come upon you, and cover you with skin, and put breath in you, that you may live. Then you shall know that I am the Eternal One.
So I prophesied as God commanded me, and the breath came into me, and they lived. They stood upon their feet, a very great host.
Then God said to me, O mortal, these bones are the whole house of Israel. Behold, they say, our bones are dried up, and our hope is lost. We are cut off. Therefore prophesy and say to them, thus says the Eternal God, behold, I will open your graves, O my people, and I will bring you home into the land of Israel.
I will put my spirit